Do you have an opinion on vaccinations?
I mean, I really don't have an opinion, and at the end of the day, I feel like if it's going to make my kid better, if it's going to keep them from getting sick, then why not? Why would you want to hamper that, you know, take that away from your child?
They're absolutely necessary. It's the one thing I know that can protect my children from being really, really ill. So I do what my doctor says. So that's what I do.
Well, I vaccinate my children. To me, I'd rather get them vaccinated than them get sick. The only thing I am against is the influenza. Like, I've never...
The flu vaccine?
Yes. Got them vaccinated for that. From my experiences getting it, I always end up getting the flu or getting really sick. And since I have not vaccinated, they have not.
They're good. Should have more.
Pro-vaccine.
Pro-vaccine. Pro-vaccine.
Recently, we've seen this in the news because of the measles outbreak and all kinds of things like that. There's been calls from certain journalists and even politicians for the idea of fining parents or jailing parents or punishing them in some way for those who choose not to vaccinate. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I feel like it's everybody's personal opinion, really. But when it comes down to it, I mean, you should vaccinate your children. It's something that unvaccinated children will not be able to go to school. So if they're putting other children at risk, it may seem like something else needs to be thought of to maybe, I feel like everybody does have their own opinion, but I don't know if it's this bad of like the measles outbreak is really, really bad, so.
I don't think you need to jail them or punish them, but I do think it should be mandatory. In fact, I think most school districts have certain vaccines mandatory unless you provide written documentation that you're opting out for religious reasons, and depending on the school district, religion could be anything you think of. It doesn't have to actually have any formal verbiage as to whatever your religious doctrine is that says you shouldn't have it. Like the Christian Scientists, for instance, some of the people feel that like they don't take blood, things like that.
So would you be against just a personal exemption, like some states allow for a personal exemption, California, for example?
Yeah, they can have the personal exemption. I just don't think they have the right to attend public schools. They want to, and up to the public schools and the charter schools, they'll have to formulate their own policy. But the way that you keep the diseases down, unfortunately, is by the herd effect. The only way you get a herd effect is to have the herd vaccinated.
I'm against it. I think it's a parent's choice.
I mean, I feel like it's their child. They should be able to do what they do. Now, if it's putting other children at risk, I think that's kind of a problem. How you police that, I mean, again, I guess that's for the politicians and for all those guys to...
Would you support a mandatory vaccination policy?
No, I don't think I would support a mandatory no, not at all.
I mean, I've already definitely vaccinated my children, so I'm already mandatory.
But
for everyone? Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't know. It's a hard... Some people have religious reasons. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, it definitely wouldn't hurt, especially in a big city like Houston.
And there are wonderful vaccines out there that are not mandated, like the HPV, for instance, which does prevent some cancers, both in men and women, although it's more promoted toward young teenage girls. That also should be mandated, and not just the Tdaps and the polios and the measles vaccine.
What do you think is driving this mistrust of vaccinations?
I can't answer that question. I don't know if it's, people trying to be a little bit more holistic, trying to be a little bit more green with, their kids and what they're doing and not wanting to give them, chemicals and toxins and all that. I'm not sure, to be honest. But again, I feel like at the end of the day, if it's going to be for the betterment of your child, why not?
I don't know. People read way too much on the internet, way too much, and they just get caught up in it and start believing and not listening to their doctors and not doing what's right for their kids.
I don't think it's science really that they're against. I think it's just people talking amongst people. I don't know. I just feel like, who was that artist that thought that
I know Jenny
Jenny
McCarthy was
yeah,
one
like
of the
I think a
bigger
lot of
people.
people follow other people, and I'm just like, well, I'm not gonna vaccinate my kids. But like I said, I think it's just a choice, just like everything that we do.
Have you heard of the name William Thompson? He's a scientist at the CDC, the Center for Disease Control.
Oh, yeah. I've read about the article in New York Times recently. Yes.
His name's been in the news for about the past 6 months because he is a scientist at the CDC who was involved with a 2004 study related to vaccines and autism. And he says in his own words that him and a group of other scientists fudged the numbers specifically related to black males 36 months and under and the rates of increased autism. Now he's turned over thousands of pages of documents to Congressman William Posey and is possibly going to be speaking before Congress in a congressional hearing. Your thoughts on that, and maybe as far as why that might lead to mistrust of vaccines?
I mean, everybody can believe whatever it is they want to, but there's more research and information that shows why vaccinating your child is better than putting your kid at risk.
I mean, I feel like if you're cheating the system like that, then you should be held accountable for what you do. In no way do I condone it. In no way do I think that it's okay. But I mean, I figure in all business and all markets, there's some sort of that going on.
It's corruption.
It's good. Yeah, it's exactly. It's corruption. It's good that he came forward and said that he did what he did. But I mean, there should be some sort of action for his action. I guess.
I think information and, for example, like the scientists we just talked about, information like that could possibly cause some parents to say, maybe I should think about this decision.
Yeah, I think so. It will. I think it will. I mean, my kid's already older. They've already done the whole vaccination thing, so I think it's, once he talks, I think newer parents are going to probably think twice about getting their kids vaccinated.
How would you feel towards, well, let's say not only, I guess, towards doctors and medical establishment, but towards the government or the institutions that are supposed to protect us and our health, if you were to find out that something like that, what did happen, that you were not provided all the information that, obviously we're thankful that your kids are safe after this vaccine, but how would that make you feel to know after the fact that you weren't given all the proper information in order to make an informed decision?
Yeah, I'd be mad, just because I probably wouldn't. If there was so many things stating that if you get this vaccination, this and this is going to happen, yeah, I probably wouldn't do it.
Absolutely. What role is the media playing in shaping people for or against vaccines, one way or the other? Is it having a more positive effect? Do you think people are getting accurate information? I mean, obviously, from the people we've talked to today, none of them have heard of CDC scientist William Thompson. None of them have heard about the possibility of him giving a congressional hearing. And I would say it's because it's not reported in any of the media you're going to see on television. And largely it's reported, I myself have called the congressman's office and confirmed this myself because that's the kind of person I am. I want to know, is this a fact? Can I tell this to other people? But everybody doesn't always do that, and they're not always fact-checking, they're not always looking and digging deeper for the information that's not going to be on the surface level. So how can we encourage more education?
It's a problem, and I think one of the problems with the news is that they present things, and where there might not be a concern or a worry, they make it into a worry that maybe is not appropriate.
Would you say that's in this case of vaccines, that it's an unnecessary worry?
Well, I think that the vaccines are necessary. If you had a family member that ever had polio, I don't think there would be any doubt in your mind about giving your children the polio vaccine. I don't think there'd be any doubt if your child died from measles. And for the matter, there are still children dying of varicella or smallpox. Because, again, not all the parents get their immunizations, and kids do die from smallpox.
Thoughts on that situation and the role that the media plays in shaping public opinion?
I mean, I think it's. We all know that the media doesn't. I mean, it is what it is. You just have to, look through things with rose-colored lenses on. You have to try to interpret what you find as fact for your own. If you go to just one source, whether it be Fox or a CNN or a C-SPAN, I mean, you need to be more open to everything that's out there. If you're gonna don't just read like a Wall Street Journal or like a New York Times, read a Washington Post. Try to see different perspectives on what's going on. But I feel like at the end of the day, It should be for you to kind of figure out what you perceive as being real or truthful. And I mean, a lot of the times we don't know. We just have to kind of go on blind faith, sadly. But I mean, that's kind of what it is.
Is it possible that there can be a middle ground, that we can say there are life-threatening illnesses that have been successfully treated with vaccinations, yet also at the same time admit that corruption does exist, and it's possible that not all vaccines are as safe as we've been told?
I think that in the case of the vaccines, they're as safe as they are. And the government does have a fund. If for instance, any child does have an adverse effect, there is a fund that pays for their care for life.
Absolutely.
So I think that fund wouldn't be there if they weren't pretty darn sure that these vaccines are what they say they are.
One aspect of that, I'm glad you brought that up. The Associated Press recently did a massive study looking at the vaccine court and the fund. The fund is funded over $1 billion towards this. It's given the name Special Vaccine Court, but it has a more official name.
Yeah.
But it's a little known building that's in Washington D.C. And the Associated Press examined 14,000 cases that have been submitted, and they found problems on both sides of the aisle. For one, they found that in this vaccine court, lawyers are paid regardless of whether they win or not. So obviously that encourages some lawyers who might just want to scam families who believe their children were hurt. It's like, yeah, I'll take your case in, and they get paid either way, whether or not they win or not.
Who's doing the paying?
The government. It comes out of the funds for that, but so the lawyers are compensated regardless. But what they found specifically, though, was that there was a failure on the government's part to advertise that the court itself exists. They also said there was a failure or a conflict of interest on both sides. The government experts that they bring in, they said, often have ties to the pharmaceutical industry, and then on the other side, the defense, the family's witnesses, they say there's conflict of interest there as well. But they also just said that sometimes families wait years, and even in some cases decades, before they're actually compensated, because in the cases where the government can say more overwhelmingly the evidence points to this vaccine had some type of effect to your child, and we're going to compensate you for future health care and other things like that. Often families wait 5+ years, even a decade. In some cases, people died before they were ever even compensated. I mean, so that court does exist, and it exists to compensate people in the instance, and possibly rare or however it may be, that they are compensated. But there are issues with that court.
Where are the pediatricians in this? If parents are taking their children to the pediatricians to be vaccinated every 2 months, the pediatricians should be on top of this. The pediatricians, I'm sure, know about this fund, and I'm sure that any competent pediatrician is advising the parent, this is an issue, and they would advise genetic testing, because at this point we know an awful lot about genetics, just to make sure that what's going on is not a genetic issue. And I really think that
I'm not a parent myself, but from what I've seen and talked to other parents, most parents aren't even aware that the vaccine court exists.
Like you said, it was my choice to get a vaccine. To me, I just feel better. But then again, I'm against the flu.
Yeah,
Vaccines.
I think that's really interesting, though, that you say that, because I'm kind of in that same boat, and I think that type of thinking is what leads other parents to being, well, if I've never gotten the flu vaccine and I've been fine my whole life, why would I jump towards these things? And whether or not that's right or not, that's not really for us to say yet. I mean, I think there's still the information hasn't been put out there yet. Obviously we can point at examples of polio and other areas where vaccines saved lives and contributed to things, but I do think that there's a growing movement of parents that seem to say, we're not automatically anti-science or even anti-vaccine, we're just saying we want more information.
Yes.
And that to me seems reasonable.
Yeah, I would think so too. I wish I would have known all that. I didn't know, and here I am getting my kids vaccinated. I probably wouldn't have done it.
Should we trust the opinion of a scientist who was involved in a study himself?
I mean, it was a long time ago. I mean, modern medicine,
2004, only 10 years ago.
I know, but 10 years ago, a lot of things happened recent. Everything gets better over time.
But you can see how it might be relevant to certain.
Yeah,
as a parent yourself.
Yeah. But at the same time, I know that if I'm gonna risk my life, if I'm gonna risk my kids and what my doctors tell me, I'm not gonna. Then I'm gonna be risking to say that the government is putting all children at risk. Do you know?
Do you trust the government when it
Of
comes to
course
that?
I do. I mean, why would I? I mean, I'm not gonna. So that means that everybody who's been vaccinated in the past like 45 years is wrong. Everybody that's done it since 2004 is wrong. So.
Well, all I know is specifically with that, with William Thompson, he was referring to the MMR vaccine
Oh yeah.
specifically.
I don't know. I'm just gonna do what's right. What?
You have time for one more?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you,
Sorry.
though. Thank you,
Okay, thank you.
appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks. So,
But as a parent, if you got vaccinated, if your child, and in say a month or a couple weeks later, there was all of a sudden these large changes in your child's health, wouldn't you then be like, I wish my doctor had told me that there
I
was
would be
something?
at my doctor's office saying, you know, have you noticed this is what's going on?
Yeah.
What's the problem? And you work with your pediatrician to figure out what the problem is, whether it was caused by the vaccine or whether it came on from something else. And that's a pediatrician's job. Especially here in Houston. My God, you've got the best pediatricians in the world.
Can you describe to us what that feels like as a parent? You know, knowing the shape of the media, knowing, as you said, that sometimes you got to get a balanced view because you're not getting the straight information from one source.
I mean, I feel like a bulk majority of the knowledge that we get is through our peers opposed to media. So being able to engage in conversation with parents, friends who are doctors or nurses or pediatric assistants or whatever, trying to get their viewpoint on things, knowing that they're not going to give us, they're not going to shoot us the wrong direction. They're going to be as open and honest with us as they would with their own kids, because we do the same. So I think that's really what I do. I mean, I don't watch tons of the news. I read stuff every now and then I'm like, oh, this is sickening, and I turn it off, and I don't care anymore.